Globally, I want to address this moment of peril for the Jewish people worldwide as we witness a disturbing spike in anti-Semitic hate speech and even instances of violence against Jews and Israelis following the October 7th massacre. Today, the National Security Council and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs put out an unusual global travel warning. We are calling on all citizens of Israel to exercise heightened caution when traveling anywhere abroad. We know that Jewish communities and their institutions, Israeli diplomatic missions, and airports handling flights to and from Israel are key targets for anti-Semites and violent anti-Semites. The National Security Council is urging all Israelis to consider whether any foreign travel anywhere in the world is necessary at this dangerous moment. Citizens planning to travel to countries with specific travel warnings are asked to postpone their visits, and we emphasize Arab and Middle Eastern states, the Northern Caucasus, and countries bordering Iran. We are also asking citizens, and truly I cannot believe that we are doing this, we are asking all citizens to avoid displaying any outward signs of their Israeli or Jewish identity when traveling anywhere in the world. If you must travel, please make sure that you have the numbers of emergency services and the local Israeli embassies on speed dial. Keep away from the anti-Israel pro-jihad protests and remain alert and vigilant about your surroundings at all times. The operation in the Gaza Strip in response to the October 7th massacre is going to plan, both above ground and below ground. Today, the IDF confirmed that it has completely encircled Gaza City by air, sea, and land. This comes 3 weeks after we gave a warning to residents in the northern Gaza Strip to get out of the way temporarily for their own safety. And that's because Gaza City, the north of the Gaza Strip, is the main Hamas stronghold. It's where Hamas has embedded most of its military infrastructure underneath people's homes, under schools, under hospitals. We're talking about a whole network of tunnels. It's often called the Gaza Metro, a whole network of underground tunnels where Hamas fighters are hiding. Those are the tunnels we're going after. We're talking about Hamas's main command center, which is located underneath the Shifa hospital in the Gaza Strip, which is really outrageous. Really an atrocious war crime to use a hospital that way to try to shield military targets. So we're moving in and we're going after every Hamas terrorist. There have been casualties on our side. Those are very painful for Israeli society. But, you know, the whole country realizes that we have no choice, and we're fighting the most moral fight there is to make sure that the terrorist barbarians who perpetrated the October 7th massacre can never hurt our people again. I can't get into specific operational matters. For that, the IDF will know better, but we're talking about very difficult fighting. This isn't two armies facing off against each other in an open battlefield like it's the Middle Ages. We're talking about dense urban warfare in an area where the enemy is prepared for us and is ready and has booby-trapped facilities and has tunnels everywhere where they can pop out and shoot at our soldiers. And that requires our men to take extreme precautions to keep themselves safe. We're doing everything we can in order to keep civilians out of harm's way. You know, 3 weeks ago, there were 1.1 million people in the northern Gaza Strip. And for 3 weeks, Israel has been urging them to leave, literally dropping leaflets on northern Gaza saying, please get out of the way for your safety. And I think only 100,000 people remain in northern Gaza because most of them have moved south to areas where they can get humanitarian aid. So we're looking at very difficult fighting, you know, fighting that will remind many people of what American and British troops experienced in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in those stages of trying to root out the terrorists and the Taliban from densely populated urban areas. It's a great challenge. It's a great challenge, but it's a challenge that the IDF is ready to face down. And so far, obviously, absenting the unfortunate and tragic casualties, the plan is, everything is going to plan. The mask is definitely slipping off Hamas. I mean, it's not like it's ever made a secret of its genocidal ambitions, its plans to murder all the Jews and eradicate the state of Israel, but the evidence is now there for all to see. One interview that's gone viral shows Ghazi Hamad, a Hamas spokesman, saying we're going to do a second October 7th and a third and a fourth. And the interviewer asked him aghast, do you mean until the total annihilation of the state of Israel? And he says, yes, that's exactly what I mean. I saw another interview with MSNBC, I think it was, interviewing Ghazi Hamad, and said, said, how are you calling for a ceasefire in Israel to stop its bombardments while you're threatening to continue massacring innocent Israeli civilians? And he looks at him in shock and says, what do you want us to do? Stop?
But how can you ask for a ceasefire? How can you ask for Israel to stop their aggression when you go on television in Lebanon here last week and say that you will continue your aggression? You will continue to launch October 7th again and again and again.
What do you want us to do? To stop?
If you're asking for a ceasefire, if you're asking for a ceasefire, it has to be two ways.
No, I am talking that we want to continue against the occupation. This is our national, our legal right to fight against the occupation. It is according to international law, according to all the regulation in the world. It is in Europe you fight against the Nazis.
And that's why Israel's pushing ahead, because we have to remove this evil regime from power. So the mask is slipping, and we know that the enlightened world, the free world, is behind us. We know that we're fighting the most moral fight there is to destroy the terrorist savages who perpetrated the October 7th massacre. And we know that leaders around the world are behind us. You know, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak stood here just last week next to Prime Minister Netanyahu and said the UK wants Israel to win. The UK government has been very solid on that point. This is a war that has to end with Hamas defeated. And indeed, as you say, Hamas's leaders make the case better than I possibly could about the dangers that Hamas poses to the people of Israel and their desire to continue using really the most spectacular, disgusting, sadistic, satanic violence imaginable to advance that goal of wiping out our country. This is a war that Hamas dragged us into. And by the way, for many years, when people said no country in the world would allow thousands of rockets to rain on its civilians, the situation in the Gaza Strip is not normal. Why does Israel tolerate this jihadi enclave so close to people's homes? There was international pressure not to wipe out Hamas completely. And in Israel as well, a sense that if we moved into the Gaza Strip, it could result in hundreds of casualties. And then what we saw on October 7th was a massacre of civilians and soldiers on a bigger scale than would have possibly happened if we'd conducted this campaign earlier. So there's a sense now that this isn't a campaign that we wanted. It's a campaign that, if anything, Israel has spent the last 16 years doing everything to try to avoid. But unfortunately, we have no choice. It's a campaign that we have to win because we have to wipe out the terrorist savages who perpetrated October 7th, since they're telling everyone in their own words, in English, that they plan to continue doing this again and again and again and again. So unfortunately, the government, the whole of society have come to the realization it's simply time to finish the job and wipe out Hamas so it can never do anything like that ever again. Important to remember, the October 7th massacre wasn't just an attack on Israelis, it was a crime against humanity. Members of over 40 countries were either abducted, murdered, or injured. This was an attack that shocked the whole world. Now, of course, we want all the foreign nationals in the Gaza Strip to get out to safety. First and foremost for us, the 240 Israeli foreign nationals in the Gaza Strip, the hostages. They're also foreign nationals. They don't belong in the Gaza Strip. They shouldn't be held in dark tunnels. We want them out. And I'll take this opportunity to thank The Sun for the phenomenal front page we saw the other day with the pictures of the 30+ children inside the Gaza Strip, drawing attention to that. Of course, we're doing everything we can to get them out. But Hamas isn't just holding our 240 people hostage. It's been holding thousands of foreign nationals hostage in the Gaza Strip and not letting them out. There have been several occasions when we've tried to coordinate to get foreign nationals out and Hamas stopped them. And just this week, we heard the US National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, saying that there are, I think, 600 Americans in the Gaza Strip that they're trying to get out, and Hamas is stopping them. And Hamas is making all sorts of demands in order to get these civilians out. And that's outrageous that Hamas is continuing to use not only our people, but other foreign nationals as human shields, as hostages as well. And we want everyone to be able to get out to safety. This war has two main goals. First of all, to wipe out Hamas so it can never hurt our people again, certainly not like on October 7th. And the second is to bring the hostages home. We want to bring back the hostages and make sure that Hamas can never abduct our people again. Now, clearly, sitting on the sidelines wasn't going to help. Sending a polite email to Hamas and asking it to return our hostages wasn't going to help. The only thing that's going to help is pressure. Both diplomatic pressure and military pressure. We already saw Hamas release 4 hostages under heavy diplomatic pressure placed on it and on its supporters. And we've seen Israeli forces free one hostage inside the Gaza Strip because we physically went in order to snatch her out. So that's what we're doing in this war. We're going to totally demolish Hamas's governing and military structure in the Gaza Strip. We're going to totally wipe it out. And we're going to do everything we can to bring those hostages home and bring them back to their families. Or rather, I'd say, bring them back to what is left of their families, because many of them were abducted after the Hamas death squads murdered their families in front of them, tortured, mutilated, and murdered their way through their villages. We want to bring them back. We want to bring them back to safety. Israel has come under attack from several directions. We're having rockets coming from the Gaza Strip, rockets coming from Lebanon. We've even had rockets coming from the southeast. Take a look at a map. That's not Lebanon and that's not Gaza. Now, we know that Hezbollah, we know that Iran are trying to distract us from Gaza. We're focusing at the moment on the total defeat of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. But every day, Hezbollah is stepping up its attacks on the northern border, sending rockets. They scored direct hits in the town of Kiryat Shmona yesterday, a town, by the way, that we have almost completely evacuated to get our civilians out of harm's way. And so Hezbollah is trying to draw our attention away from Gaza. And we've been very clear, we don't want to fight a war on two fronts against Hezbollah and Hamas at the same time. But if Hezbollah forces us into a full-scale war, we're ready to fight that war, we're ready to win. And the consequences, both for Hezbollah as a terror organization and for Lebanon as a whole, are going to be severe. We're doing everything we can to deter Hezbollah, but it takes two to tango. There's an actor on the other side, and Hezbollah might make a terrible mistake and force Israel to defend its citizens in a massive way. We hope we don't get there, and that's why we're continuing to try to deter Hezbollah and say, if you're thinking of messing with Israel, just don't do it. We welcome humanitarian aid entering through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. It's been coming in increasing numbers. That's something we're trying to encourage. And we have one condition: that aid cannot go to Hamas, and it can't be used by Hamas to rearm its arsenals and to attack our people. So fuel is an excellent example. The Gaza Strip has fuel. The Gaza Strip has plenty of fuel. Hamas has already stockpiled 500,000 liters of fuel. The reason is that it planned this war in advance and it planned for a long fought out battle. Now, what is 500,000 liters of fuel? It's enough to circumnavigate planet Earth in a Boeing 747. Hamas has enough fuel to take one of those Toyotas that it used in the October 7th massacre and circumnavigate the globe 178 times. Now, not only has Hamas stockpiled fuel, Hamas is also stealing fuel from the people of Gaza. Not only is the Hamas command center located underneath the Shifa hospital in Gaza, we have intelligence that we have declassified for the world that Hamas is in fact stealing fuel from the hospital's own reserves. And I can't think of anything more sick than that, of a terror organization stealing fuel from hospitals inside Gaza. Because Hamas prefers to ventilate its tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip instead of diverting them for the hospital ventilators above ground. So many well-meaning people come to Israel and say, look, you need to give fuel into Gaza because the hospitals are running out of fuel. And our answer is no. The Gaza Strip has plenty of fuel. There is fuel in the hospitals and Hamas is stealing that fuel. So if we were to allow more fuel to go into the Gaza Strip, we know that Hamas is going to steal it, because even if it reaches the hospitals, Hamas is in the hospitals. Its command center is under the hospitals. It's going to steal that fuel because it has prioritized its genocidal war against the people of Israel. It's prioritized its rockets and its abductions and its burning and its beheadings, and not the people of the Gaza Strip. And we think that anyone in the international community concerned for sick people inside the Gaza Strip should be demanding that Hamas release fuel for the hospitals instead of asking more fuel to go in that Hamas is going to steal. Yes, there's an urban legend that the Gaza Strip is totally dependent on Israel for water. That's not true. The latest figures I've seen, the Gaza Strip gets only about 10% of its water from Israel. Where does it get the rest of its water from? There's an aquifer, they have ways to treat it, and they also have desalination plants that need the fuel that Hamas is currently hoarding. Now, here's the absurdity. First of all, under international law, there is no requirement for Israel to supply enemy territory with provisions, okay? There's no example in the history of warfare of a country that is attacked in a war, literally giving resources to the enemy. But we've been providing water because we don't want a serious humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. Now, here's the absurdity. We know that before the war, Hamas literally dug up water pipes in the Gaza Strip in order to turn them into rockets and fire them back at us. We know that on the first day of the war, during the October 7th massacre, they fired missiles that hit the water infrastructure. Now, Israel has opened 2 water pipes into the southern Gaza Strip because that's where we want people to get humanitarian aid. And a mortar hit one of those pipes. Israel's supplying water to the Gaza Strip. Hamas is digging up pipes, turning them into rockets, using them to hit the water pipes. And then our people are going under fire in order to fix those water pipes so the people inside the Gaza Strip can have water. Really, the situation is absurd. And when I consider the contrast between the efforts that Israel is making to make sure civilians in Gaza have the humanitarian aid they need, and the outrageous accusations we're seeing around the world, really, that contrast just makes my head explode.